Hello, this is R Rats with Team 4545 League, analyzing the game between AZ 2112 and McKnights, played in Team Event 53 in the third round. Let's have a look. Okay, an old defense to the Queen's Gambit. I can't even remember what it's called, it's that old. Generally speaking, it's not regarded as the best, and from what I remember, when I was a teenager, another couple other teens and I were talking about chess openings, and we came to the conclusion just by following the books that the best thing to do was not to play e4 right just yet. Knight f3, and then eventually you're going to play e4. And I don't remember all the reasons. We were all rated about 1500 back then, but I've known about this opening ever since then. So, but there's nothing wrong with e4. And now it can take on some similar characteristics to a Gruenfeld defense. Could even transpose, I suppose. But White should be able to avoid that happening. I would think that if Black can take this into a straight Gruenfeld defense, he's accomplished quite a bit. So the question for White in his analysis would be how to stop it from becoming a Gruenfeld defense. Okay, so Bishop g4 is often a Gruenfeld defense move, but maybe if you're going to try to steer it that way, stop with g6 first. But anyway, Bishop g4 is fine. It's often played in the Gruenfeld. Now, no more Gruenfeld. Okay, so that was an option Black could have tried, and he didn't. So that possibility is now over. What do we do here with Black? So theoretically, Black has played an opening that the books have frowned on for 100 years. I don't know. How can Black make things better? Well, he's first and foremost he's got to get his development going. He's got to move his bishop and castle, and then bring out the queen knight. How do we want to do that? Well, one thing we could try, and I'm not saying it's a good move, but it just strikes me as potential here, is to play c5. Now what does this do? Okay, it does a number of things. The first objective is that if White takes on c5, Black gets a little bit of a liquidation here. Okay, so if d takes c5, Black trades queens, okay, and then now he gets his bishop developed. Okay, so by doing this, Black has taken a lot of sting out of White's opening. He's geared it towards an ending, a middle game that will have endgames in mind. And there's all kinds of ways Black can try and follow this up. He still needs to develop his queen knight. He still needs to castle, yet with the queens off, this might be a position where Black won't castle, but play king e7 and have the king a little bit better centralized. So my first impression, if I'm Black in this position, I should be happy. White doesn't have a lot of threats. Eventually you could attack the bishop on c5 with a rook on c1, but that's not happening right away. Okay, White could threaten a mate in 1, bishop g5, right? But Black can avoid that easy enough. He can play knight c6, he could play f6, or he could castle. So I really don't think White gets a lot out of this. So the c5 move has some point to it. Now, of course, the alternative is, what if White doesn't take? Well, normally we like to push by, but we can't, because Black is covered d5. So there's another critical move here, and that's to stop and play bishop b5 check. Okay, but this has pluses and minuses. Okay, the minus is that for both sides, there's minuses for both sides. First, Black can't bring his bishop back to interpose. That's a common theme here. Black has to get a check, so he's only got pretty much two candidate moves. Well, 3 if you consider both knights go to d7, and I really don't think there's any point in bringing that knight back to b7 or to e7 or knight c6. And now the drawback for White is doing this is that now the knight's pinned, and that's something that white wants to avoid, because d4 is under pressure. So, but although this pin kind of compensates somewhat for it, if it were black's move, and it isn't, but if it was black's move, he could play take on d4, and after queen takes d4, he could go ahead and trade queens. And of course, one drawback with this now is that c6 is coming under attack, and chances are black's going to get an isolated pawn. But it's not black's move, and black may even have better. Maybe he can take on f3 first, and the point being that when he takes on d4, that white can't recapture. So, but it's white's move here. What can white do? Well, he can give up the bishop pair with bishop takes c6. Okay, now if you go into the lines I was saying with c takes d5, black does what he was doing otherwise, except now he has the bishop pair, and he may even return the bishop pair just to double up the white pawns. And black has one weakness, that pawn on c6, so black's probably surviving this. So I'm thinking that in this position, c5 might be a perfectly good move for black. I can't. You'd have to do your homework on this and sit down and analyze this, and maybe even see if it's been played before. And if the books have it played, you could see what's wrong with it, if anything. But c5 looks to be the move to play until I can see someone come up with something else. I'll stick with that. So anyway, what does black do? And there's nothing wrong with what he did. As I said, he's got to complete his development. He's got to get castled. And white still has to complete his development too. Look, the queen side, the entire queen side is sitting at home. So there, one of them comes out, helps alleviate some of the pressure on d4, and takes the sting out of c5. Although the fact the bishop went to c7 first took some of that sting out, because if black was able to play c5 now, the bishop would end up moving twice instead of once to recapture on c5. Okay, so just continues with development. It still has similar characteristics to Grunfeld. Now, I think h6 is just plain wrong, and you know, we've talked about this kind of move in many games. Why is black weakening his king side? Okay, obviously he's trying to keep something out of g5. What is he trying to keep out of g5? Well, the knight. Well, knight's not going to go there, right? The knight can't go there. He just bishop takes bishop and queen takes bishop, and you pick up a free piece, right? Okay, and if the bishop goes there, you just take it, free piece, right? So I just don't understand why people. I mean, I'm not trying to be mean, Mr. McKnights. I don't understand the thought process behind h6. If we can correct the thought process while you're playing this move, you'll play better chess, and you'll have a better game, and then your opponent will play a better game too, because you're playing better. So because you're making it tougher on him to beat you. Okay, so if you're looking at candidate moves, and they have purposes. What are the candidate moves here? Well, they're knight bd7 and knight c6. Those are the first two candidate moves that should come to mind, because both of them develop a piece. Now, knight bd7 certainly looks good, the reason being that it's planning to go to f6 next and become a useful piece on the king side. Okay, so that's a perfectly good candidate move. Knight c6 is reasonable, but the knight that doesn't quite have as much flexibility there as it did, but it might. White's, well, no, you're not threatening bishop takes f3 because he takes back with the knight, and he's got d4 covered. But so knight bd7 just seems to scream to be played. How does white react? Okay, well, one idea is to play a5 and try and drive that knight away. But so what? You know, just let him. Put it back on d7. Black's reasonable here, right? The game looks very symmetrical. The only difference being the position of the queen's bishops. Everything else is a perfect match, and then the center. Okay, so oops, just trying to show a couple possibilities. Okay, so h6 it weakens the king position. It doesn't help development, and it doesn't do black a lot of good. So white just develops a piece. Put the rook on the open file. Now, going back to last move, the good candidate move was knight bd7. Is it still a reasonable move? Well, sure, because it wants to transfer over to f6. Okay, was c6 necessary? Not necessarily. It didn't develop. Was white threatening c7? No, he wasn't. Okay, so knight bd7. Now, if white wants to threaten c7, well, we can deal with it, right? Right? Yeah, of course. Then we can deal with it. And then white's committed to a square for the queen. Then we can play rook c8 or c6 here. We can't play c5 necessarily, but we might be able to because there's some pins. Here's c5. You know, what are you going to do? Now we go pin it, right? And now we're on it 3 times, and the queen is in the way, so black could safely take it. And I'm not sure if this is sound, but it's just something to analyze. Okay, so c6. So black's made 2 pawn moves when he could have been making developing moves. Both those pawns could have been back where they were, and this knight on b8 could have been on f6. That's the difference in this position. And so black, in effect, is giving up 2 tempos because white wasn't threatening anything. Okay, so now knight b3, which is decent. It restrains c5, which we have seen has been thematic for black a couple of times, but it looks like it's gone now. So now, good candidate move. Knight bd7, right? Hooray, good. Good job. All right, let's move on. Now, white just increases his development advantage. He has his queen and his queen-rook developed. Black doesn't. And just a few moves ago, white's entire queenside was sitting there undeveloped, and I pointed it out. Now he's managed to get them all out in move 8 through 12. Okay? So, black's still okay, but what's his candidate move? Well, I've already given it. The idea of knight bd7 was to play to f6. And the good thing about that is it gets a piece over the king side where he's useful, and it also attacks e4. So let's see, does he play it? Yes, good job. Okay. Now, one drawback with e5 for white is it gives black this wonderful square to have a knight. So he doesn't do it. He guards the pawn. Okay, fine. Now, black should still be okay here. He doesn't have his queen developed. He doesn't have his queen rook developed, but they're close enough, and the fact that this d file is opened up kind of develops the black queen, although there's some risk because it could get attacked on the open file. But then again, if you double on that file, then there's maybe some tricks on this bishop on d3 with an eventual e5 or c5 with preparation. Okay, now I think this was an impulsive move. It's played with, okay, black gained 8 seconds on the clock, so he spent 37 seconds. The idea is to double pawns, and it really wasn't necessary, and it also further shows what was wrong with h6, because g5 was one of the squares that the knight could go to, and black was trying to keep white out of there. But now suddenly there's a certain amount of poison in this position. White now has an open g-file, king to h1 and rook to g1. That opportunity wasn't there before, and then there's some threats on h6, and black may even be, or white may even be able to sacrifice on that square, particularly with the g-file opening up. So black's kind of starting to tread some thin ice here, and partly he's playing too quick. Okay, so other than bishop takes f3, what were his candidate moves? Well, rook c8 or queen d7. Both are reasonable candidate moves because queen d7 is no good. Knight e5 comes in. I can see why black might not want that knight coming into e5, but there's a useful move here if that's your concern. Just play knight from b to d7. That kind of stops knight e5, right? Well, maybe not, but watch. Okay, take. Now, this bishop is nice and shut in. It's not going to be attacking too easily on the king side, right? That's true. It's not. So black just redeploys. He could go to e8 just as easily. But this has a threat, and we got to be careful about this bishop takes h6 stuff. But anyway, there was just some possibilities I like to open up for discussion. Let's get to the main line. So bishop takes was probably premature, and now here's another retreating move. These guys need to get in the game. Okay, they need in the game. So white wasn't threatening anything, but it looks like what black is doing is trying to get some exchanges. He's trying to come into f5, g5 and make some exchanges. So white just goes about his way, puts the king in the corner, taking advantage of the moves that black has presented, and since the g-file opened up, and there it is. He's trying to trade pieces. But white says, I don't want to trade pieces. I like my pieces, and since you're kind of cramped, I'm going to keep the pieces on, and that's an excellent strategy on white's part. So now he goes back. Now what has black gained here? He hasn't really gained a heck of a lot. He still hasn't developed his queen and his queen bishop, and now white's got this very imposing pawn center that's ready to advance at the correct time, and he's got an open g file to play with. White is close to winning here, very close. And f5. I mean, this just further weakens the king position, and it doesn't do anything to develop the queen or the queen rook. Black's just asking for trouble here. Okay, so white just reinforces his center. He says, okay, if you want to trade, you can undouble my pawns. Now my queen's ready to swing over. I've got all kinds of activity here. Thank you. And now the knight comes back, so black has just wasted some moves. His knight's gone to h7 and back to f6. His bishop went to g5 and back to e7. And all white did was improve his position. As a result, he got his, while black was doing that, white got his king in the corner, his rook on the open file, cleared the second rank for his queen, reinforced his center, and what's black done? He's just weakened his king position with f5 and wasted a few moves. So white's just got to be delighted. And there's the culprit up there, clock. 50 minutes and 55 seconds. What are you doing, black? You're in a bad game. This is the time to sit down, hunker down, and think. Reevaluate. Hey, I'm not playing well. Hey, I'm playing too quick. I just realized that. I've only spent this much time on the game. Well, I'm in trouble here. Time for me to sit down and try to find a plan. I don't know what black's plan is unless I sit and take longer than I have spent on this game. I mean, I've gone over my 15 minutes, but I'm doing this deliberately just to try to help. I mean, if you can't take time on your game, you're not going to play well. Period. Why are you playing? It's not just you. You have a team. I don't know the team standing or how critical this game is, but I'm trying to encourage everyone to play better. And I want to always show the best lines or every line, and I'll miss one movers. So what? I'm here to promote discussion, and one of the discussions is for you guys to come out and say, yeah, I moved too quick. Next time I won't. And yeah, I need to develop my pieces. I didn't this time. Next time I won't. My pieces will come out. Okay, so now queen g2. Now suddenly, move 19, white is threatening checkmate. To be able to threaten a mate in one in under 20 moves, to me, at anything over 1600 strength is excellent. If you can do that, you've done your job. If you can threaten a mate in one, that's rare, that quick. Now, of course, black will see it, and he does. But anyway, point is, now white's just winning material. He's got a pawn. Now, he has doubled and isolated pawns, and well, actually tripled pawns. If black retakes, he'll only have double pawns. But a pawn's a pawn, and this bishop that could have been hemmed in earlier is now getting into the game. So queen c8, and now. Wow. White is practically almost winning by force, and I guess black doesn't want to retreat again, although maybe he has to. It's just an admission of defeat by coming over here, because white just happily picks up the exchange, and he's got a pawn on top of it. His bishop is loose, but that's easy to fix. See? It's fixed. But at least finally black got his development completed but it came at the price of losing the exchange and a pawn, and that's too much of a price to pay to complete your development when it could have been completed moves ago. Okay, so go attack the queen, and white just routinely finds good moves, and black continues to play quickly, but really it doesn't matter. Black is losing. He can't save this, and now white sees the pin on the knight and starts working on that, and eventually that knight is going to be lost because of the pin. Nice move, f6, threatens the rook, threatens to take on g7 and get rid of another defender of the knight, and game is just about over. Okay, black should resign, but he plays on. White just goes about his business, and after this move, I think black, no, he didn't resign yet. He did real quick. Yeah, now it's just going to be a forced mate in a couple more moves. So I noticed, I didn't watch it, but now black took his time, but he started taking it when it was too late. He had all the time in the world to get a reasonable game out of this, and instead watched white take his time and get the good position. So very, very nice game by white. I was impressed by your play. You didn't seem to make any fundamental errors at all. Good game. Black, I know I've seen you play. I've seen you play better. I know you can do better, and I know next time you will. All right, thanks everyone for their time, and look forward to making another video for you all soon. Take care.